Level 1, the Peasant. You come into the world in a village no cartographer has bothered to mark. The people born there call it by a name, of course, but in the capital, that name would mean nothing to anyone. Your home is made from rock and packed earth. The ceiling presses low overhead. There is a narrow place where the family sleeps, and a second room where the rest of life happens. When winter closes in, the animals are brought inside with you. The mountain cold drops like a weight. Outside, almost nothing lives through it. Not when the cold is like that. Your father works a strip of soil that is not his. His own father bent over the same earth, and before him, another father did the same. The fields belong to a Sipahi, a mounted soldier given permission by the Sultan to draw taxes from your village. You have never stood before this man, but you know his name. More importantly, you know his demands. After the harvest, part of your grain goes to him. Some of your days belong to him as labor. If you use the road, there is a toll. Carry goods toward the market, and payment is demanded again. So you pay, you keep your mouth shut. There is no office waiting for your grievance, no place to send a complaint. Complaints disappear before they arrive anywhere. The Sipahi answers to the provincial governor. The governor answers to Istanbul. And Istanbul is a place that will remain only a word to you. In spring, you sow wheat. Through the burning months, you keep it alive. In autumn, you cut it down and gather it fast. One badly timed rain can destroy the whole year. The quota does not bend. Once the Sipahi has taken his portion, and once the grain tithe has gone to the state, whatever is left belongs to your household. That is what keeps you alive until the next harvest comes. In a fortunate year, it is enough. In a cruel year, you borrow. You avoid it if you can. Debt is a dangerous animal here. Take money or grain from the wrong man, and a family can lose everything it has. You have watched that happen. So you do not borrow. You tighten your belt instead. Everyone does. The entire village goes hungry together. Your children work beside you in the fields before letters mean anything to them. Some will never learn those letters at all. Most will be born, labor, grow old, and die in this valley under this same pattern of work. To you, that is not a sorrowful story. It is simply the outline life has been given. Every life has an outline. Few people are allowed to draw their own. You know your prayers, and you speak them before sunrise. You know the moods of the soil and the seasons. You know your neighbors, and they know you. You remember who came to lift the roof beam after spring floods broke your wall. You remember who carried food to your door when your wife was too ill to cook. A man 5 plots away let your family take water from his well through a whole season without rain. He asked for nothing. You will remember that until you die. You do not possess the kind of words that could measure its importance. The village is held together by favors, obligations, and old kindnesses. Nobody writes them down. Everybody remembers. You have never put your name to a contract. You have never had reason to. When all people know where a man lays his head, his promise and a witness can be enough. That is not a small thing. It is nearly everything. Level 2, the Artisan. You leave the village at 15. Your uncle works leather in a town far from the capital. He has no sons of his own, so he takes you into his house. For nearly 2 years, you sweep the floor of his workshop before he allows your hands near the tools. You paid attention to everything. The pull of the blade through hide, the tilt of his wrist, how hard he pressed, how far apart the stitches should sit. You stored it all away. So when the knife finally passed into your hand, it felt less like learning and more like remembering. Across the Ottoman Empire, craft guilds formed the skeleton of town life. They decided who was allowed to run a shop. They set the prices people could ask. They enforced the standards every piece of work had to meet. Your uncle belonged to the guild and carried a respectable name among its members. Through him, the door opened for you. You were entered as an apprentice in the official guild book. Once your name appeared there, the state could see you. Back in the village, you had never possessed that kind of existence. After 6 years, you rose to journeyman. After another 9, you were made a master. The guild did not simply grant it. They tested you. Older men, craftsmen who had spent half their lives at the bench, studied your work while you stood before them. Your fingers stayed steady. The piece passed. You rented your own shop on a street already lined with 8 other leather workers. Rivalry existed, but it was contained. The guild made sure of that. Nobody slashed prices to ruin the rest. Nobody pushed past the limits of the space assigned to him. The order could feel stiff, even maddening at times. Yet it gave you security. You could estimate your income. You could predict your expenses. You did not fear the market dropping out from under you without warning. The man next door could not wake up and sell boots for half their value just to steal your customers. The guild also demanded service. Sick members received help. Money went toward maintaining the neighborhood mosque. Guilds appeared in the public processions for holy days and victories in war. In early autumn, when the governor came back from campaign, you marched carrying a banner. Piles of craftsmen filled the line. Every guild had its own standard. Every guild knew its place. The shoemakers came ahead of the tailor. The tailor came ahead of the coppersmiths. You marched with the leather workers near the center. For that brief stretch of road, you were not only a man with a shop, you belonged to something wider. You married a woman whose family lived 2 streets away. You have 5 children. 5 lived past infancy. You do not mention the 5th. Your eldest son is already at the bench beside you. When he grips a blade, you recognize yourself in him. You were just as cautious at his age, just as solemn. Your name remains in the guild register. Your shop has stood in the same place for 18 years. The city has expanded around it. When your life ends, the chair will pass to your son. Level 5, the soldier. You are a janissary. This was not the life into which you were born. It was the life you were taken into. The devshirme is the system by which the empire gathers boys from Christian households in the Balkans and Anatolia. You were 9 years old. You still remember the officials arriving in your village. You remember your mother's face when their hands indicated you. They chose you because you were strong, sharp-eyed, and unusually tall for your age. That year, 11 boys were taken from your district. You were converted to Islam. They gave you a Turkish name. Then they carried you to the capital. Your instruction starts at once, and it never truly stops. Year after year, you are taught Turkish, the Quran, military order, and submission to command. Submission matters more than anything else. It is the first lesson placed in you. It is the final one hammered down. The Janissary Corps is the private army of the Sultan. You are his in every possible sense. No household claims on you. No property passed down to you. No wife, not until you rise high enough in the ranks. You are made into a weapon, and weapons are not supposed to split their loyalty in many directions. The barracks becomes your house. The unit becomes your blood. The men beside you at meals are the ones who count. The men beside you in drill. The men beside you on the march. You lie shoulder to shoulder with them through the bitter winters of Anatolia. You eat from the same great cauldron, and that cauldron carries a meaning no outsider fully grasps. If a unit will not raise it, the palace understands the warning. Rebellion is near. A single sign. Nothing more is needed. When battle finally comes, the purpose of all that training becomes clear. The Janissaries are the infantry most feared across the known world. You have practiced with firearms while many European armies are still debating whether gunpowder stains a warrior's honor. Your line stays firm under strain that shatters other soldiers. You are not truly there for territory, or fame, or wages. Those things exist, but they are not the heart of it. You fight because you belong to something. That belonging sinks deeper than language can reach. You have marched through 5 campaigns. You have stood on open earth inside gunsmoke and kept your place while every nerve in you screamed to flee. Once, you went across a river while arrows fell around you. You cannot remember choosing to do it. Your body moved because the men to your left and to your right were moving too. That is what belonging can make of a man. Your scars hurt when the weather turns cold. They always will. You have done things you do not speak about. You never will. Your pay comes regularly. Your stipend is delivered when it is due. You understand how much that matters. Some soldiers serve for years and never receive what they are owed. In an empire of this scale, that is no small thing. Level 5, the merchant. You live on the road between cities. Istanbul to Bursa to Aleppo to Cairo, and back again. The roads you follow are Ottoman roads. The hands along the way are Ottoman hands. Stone caravanserais raised by the state. Traders can sleep inside them without fear. They can lock away their goods. No local strongman demands payment merely to let them breathe under his roof. The sultans understood that commerce creates wealth, and wealth becomes power. So they built what trade required. They kept the routes safer than most rulers ever manage. You know that from experience. You have traveled far enough to compare. You buy and sell silk, spices, and cloth. Now and then, you handle goods that are less convenient to describe on a customs form. At every important checkpoint, the officials have their prices. Some belong to the law, others belong to habit. You know which is which. You have been in this trade for 16 years. Your father worked the same seismisbah for you. Your father dealt in modest lots at a market far from the capital. You took that foundation and made it larger. The storehouse you keep in Kavran contains more merchandise than your grandfather could have imagined. Seeing across an entire lifetime, you are not an aristocrat. No honorifics hang from your name. Still, the people you can reach are often worth more than rank when real work has to be done. You know the harbor clerk who will stamp a cargo list without making it sleep on his desk. You know which route can be trusted in each season, and which one turned dangerous after the old garrison station was ruined and the raiders began watching it. You know the trader in Aleppo whose word can be trusted, and the man who will question the scales only after the bargain is finished. At the Syrian border, you know the inspector who wants silver in his hand, and the one who would rather be paid from the bales themselves. Information is the true merchandise. Silk and spices are only the visible shapes it takes while passing from hand to hand. You pay what the state demands, because the other choice costs more. You have seen what that other choice looks like. On Fridays, you go to the mosque because the community there is not an idea. It is a living network. The bonds made in that place are also part of trade. You are not sneering at religion. You are simply practical about all things, faith included. When the empire is steady, business breathes. When it shakes, you have seen roads, fortunes, and families shake with it. You know very well which side of that divide you intend to stand on. In your father's day, there was a year when two pashas struggled over a frontier town for 5 months. The passage through it was blocked. Caravans waited in the mud on either side, unable to move until one claimant prevailed. 5 merchants you knew were ruined in that season. You have never let that lesson fade. You hold it close the way other men hold prayers. Level 5, the scholar. You are an alim, man trained in sacred learning. You spent 17 years in the madrasas, moving through the course of study by which the Ottoman state forms judges, instructors, and jurists. You were diligent and controlled. Arabic and Persian are open to you. You can follow the narrowest arguments of Hanafi jurisprudence for hours and never lose your place. The Ilmai order is a profession with visible steps. At the bottom stands the instructor in a provincial madrasa, teaching boys who may become artisans, soldiers, or farmers. Above him is the mudaris of a greater school in an important city. Then come the qadis, the judges who bring Islamic law into ordinary courtrooms day after day. Higher still are the kadiaskers, senior military judges responsible for legal matters across broad regions. At the summit in Istanbul stands the Sheikh al-Islam. A fatwa from him may bless the Sultan's policy or cast it into doubt. You serve as qadi in a city of 36,000 souls. Each morning, petitions reach you. Boundaries between properties argued over by families for generations. Inheritance cases where the arithmetic refuses to behave. Agreements that collapse after market prices move. Charges of theft supported by witnesses who seem too convenient. Household quarrels that have rotted for years before finally reaching your threshold because someone's patience ended. You apply Sharia as it is understood through the Hanafi school. A court clerk writes down what you decide. Year after year, the volumes grow. In time, they form something larger than legal memory. A near-complete record of how this city lived, argued, bought, married, inherited, fought, and endured. You answer to God, you also answer to the state. On some mornings, those obligations stand together without friction. On others, the space between them is where your real work begins. Because the written authorities do not settle every question by themselves. You know the chain of precedent. You know the jurists. You know the accepted reasoning. But you also know that every ruling passes through a human mind, and no human mind is free of weakness. 6 weeks earlier, a man stood before you and accused his own brother of taking what belonged to them from their father's estate. The brother sat 5 feet away and gave another account entirely. Neither man was simply lying. Each carried a portion of what had happened. You located the route the law made available, and you took it. Whether it was the right route may not become clear for many years. So you keep trying to judge beyond the borders of your own flaws. Some days you manage it. In the end, the weight of those days will be measured. There are cases that ask little from you. The rule is plain. The matter is finished before the afternoon has fully begun. Then there are cases where a pair of honest people face one another, and each is correct in one way and mistaken in another. The law points your eyes forward, but it does not mark the final place to stand. You must find that place yourself. Those are the judgments that return with you after sunset. Those are the ones that remain in your thoughts at night, when the streets beyond your window have fallen silent. Level 6, the Provincial Governor. You are a bey, governor of a sanjak, one of the empire's administrative districts. Your province might lie in the Balkans, or far east toward the Persian frontier. The Sultan appointed you, helped by the recommendation of a patron inside the central government. Nothing about the office is guaranteed. You hold it only as long as the Sultan permits. Do well, and a greater province may come next. Let your patron lose influence in Istanbul, and your seat can be handed to another man with barely a sound. The post is larger than outsiders imagine. You oversee tax collection from every district under your command. When the figures are sent to Istanbul, they must balance. Any irregularity invites questions you would rather never hear. You are responsible for keeping the Sipahi cavalry in your territory ready for war. These riders are the provincial spine of the empire. You preserve order, too. That phrase sounds easy. It is not. Appeals come to you when local caddies can go no further. Merchants petition you after their cargo is confiscated. Village headmen complain about soldiers who have lodged themselves in homes without permission. Matters with no proper door eventually arrive at yours. You must decide them all, and still you build. A new mosque, a working fountain, a bridge restored well enough to shorten a trade road by 5 days. A governor who leaves visible works behind remains in memory. You mean to remain. The man who leaves nothing is forgotten before his successor has even settled in. You have enemies. Every man who holds this office has them. Some are rivals within the administrative machine, quietly sending letters to Istanbul. Others are provincial magnates, men who dislike being reminded that their authority exists only so long as the center permits it. You handle them through posts granted and posts denied, through invitations into your audience hall, and through the cold fact of being left outside it. At this height, power is mostly a matter of files, seals, and signatures. The blade is there, waiting behind the documents. You prefer not to draw it. But when it becomes necessary, you act cleanly, decisively, and then return to business. There was a village 5 years ago. A local strongman had been taking an unofficial charge for 9 years, piled on top of the lawful tax. Governors before you had listened to the villagers complain. Nothing had come of it. You dispatched 5 soldiers with a written order. The strongman spent 8 months behind bars. His private system collapsed. At harvest, the villagers sent dried figs to your residence. You took them. It cost you almost nothing. To them, it meant justice had finally acquired a face. That is the labor. Level 8, the Vizier. Now you sit in the Devon, the Imperial Council, the inner machinery of the most powerful empire on earth. The Viziers gather in the Topkapi Palace and settle the affairs of a realm spread over 5 continents. Campaigns whose planning begins years before armies march. Wars that consume treasure before any troops step onto the road. Tax rules for provinces that have almost nothing in common economically. Legal quarrels that have climbed every lower staircase and can climb no higher. Letters to the kings of France, to the Doge of Venice, to the Shah of Persia, and to 10 other rulers who either desire something from the empire or dread what it may do. You did not arrive here quickly. A lifetime of disciplined service brought you this far. Your governorship was studied. Your reputation for steadiness, ability, and loyalty was weighed. You built ties with men close enough to be heard by the Sultan. You chose those men carefully. All of it, gathered across 18 years, has produced this chair at the table. You are one vizier among several. Above the council sits the Grand Vizier, the Sidram. He carries the Sultan's seal. In the Sultan's name, he directs the empire's daily work. The Sultan is absent from most meetings, yet not truly absent. He observes from behind a latticed window. Every man present understands that. Every gesture, every pause, every sentence is shaped by it. Politics inside the Devon are merciless. The ground never stays still. Alliances that seemed firm in the previous spring are beginning to crack now. Men who were smiling at you 6 weeks earlier have started arranging themselves around your position. You have lived through the fall of 5 Grand Viziers. 2 were removed without spectacle. Another was not. Survival meant knowing the court's weather before the storm broke. It meant stepping away from doomed factions before they were visibly doomed. You once saw men cling too long. You have not forgotten what became of them. You are not proud of every calculation. But you made them. You made them because you understood the alternative: to vanish from political life altogether. Men who lose in the politics of the Devon do not lose gently, safely, or with honor preserved. You still remember the second Vizier who served beneath the former Grand Vizier. The summons reached him while he was at dinner. Before the dishes had even been taken away, he had already been removed from the palace. By the end of that same week, his name had disappeared from the official registers. His household was maintained. In that affair, that counted as mercy. There are moments in council when he returns to your mind. He returns when you hear your own voice slow down, when you notice yourself weighing a phrase far more carefully than the matter seems to demand. Level 8, the Grand Vizier. The Sultan placed the imperial seal in your hands. You remember the instant with a sharpness ordinary life never grants. The seal makes you the empire's voice in its daily affairs. The Sultan is the empire too, of course, but it is you who carries out the routine machinery of rule in his name, day after day. You direct campaigns that send vast armies over country, harsh enough to ruin a weaker administration. You supervise recruitment, supply, and the bargaining of alliances with rulers, whose devotion lasts only until your latest favor has been spent. You watch over revenue drawn from customs, land taxes, tribute, and trade privileges in provinces many of your clerks will never see with their own eyes. Your signature alters the fate of countless people who will pass their lives without ever learning who you are. That is the office. The strain is unbroken. It does not recede. The Sultan is in the room even when he is nowhere near it. Any order you issue can be undone by him without explanation. Each triumph is his by nature. It has always been arranged that way. Each failure, however, settles on you alone. Grand Viziers are dismissed when usefulness runs out. They are dismissed when they give offense. They are dismissed when a faction persuades the Sultan that another servant would be better. Some are sent quietly to estates in the provinces. Others lose far more than office during the same week they surrender the seal. You understood all of this before you accepted. And still, you accepted. You believed you could do the work. More honestly, you could not bear to watch a less capable man do it in your place. That is the real answer. This office requires merciless honesty with yourself, and you force yourself into that habit every day. At this height, self-deception is not a weakness. It is a disaster. You also govern time. Your own hours are the rarest resource under your control. Petitions arrive in piles. Every provincial governor seeks a hearing. Every commander asks for men, money, or supplies. Every envoy expects an answer. Every merchant's guild wants judgment on some exemption from tax. You cannot handle all of it. You cannot approach handling all of it. You cannot even read all of it. So you learn to identify the person inside each bureau who truly understands the matter, and then to trust the summary that person gives you. That ability rescued you in the opening months, when you were still attempting to examine every document yourself. It was consuming you. Level 9, the Sultan's family. You are a prince, an Ottoman prince, which means you entered life inside a world of jeweled confinement, limitless possibility, and limitless peril. Your father is the Sultan. Your brothers are not merely family. Inside the palace, they are rivals in a sense no brother beyond those walls could fully grasp. Ottoman succession is nothing like the European model. No eldest son is automatically promised the crown. Power belongs to whichever son can seize the throne and keep it. In the earlier centuries, that often meant brothers marching armies against one another, civil wars beginning while the father still breathed or before his body had even grown cold. Over time, the empire gave legal shape to what reality had already been doing. Once a sultan ascended, his brothers could be killed by strangulation with a silk cord, removing the chance of another struggle. Silk was used because royal blood was not to be spilled by steel. You have known this since childhood. Every prince knows it. No one needs to say it plainly. It is present at every gathering of the dynasty, as visible as a chair in the room, and just as deliberately unnamed. Your education was dazzling. Languages, history, strategy, poetry, music, government, law. You were trained for a throne that might never be yours. You were also trained under the shadow of a death that could always arrive. In later centuries, the custom shifted. Princes were no longer routinely killed. They were shut away instead. They were placed in the caves, a luxurious prison within the palace, watched constantly, served by attendants, and separated from the world beyond. That separation was the purpose. A prince could be comfortable there, but he could not build the relationships and loyalties that real power requires. You have spent 13 years in the cave phase. You are 34 years old. You know the Quran and 5 languages. You know the military classics, and you know the court poetry produced across 5 centuries of Ottoman culture. You have studied the history of every campaign the empire ever waged. You have never ridden a horse beyond these walls. You have never administered a city. You have never even attempted it. You have never made a choice whose consequences reached farther than this enclosed world. And if your brother, the Sultan, dies tomorrow without an heir, you will walk out of this palace and into the most intricate machinery of rule in the known world, both prepared and completely unprepared at the same instant. A tutor comes to you 5 times each week. He is 58 years old. He served your grandfather. He tells you what rule looks like from the inside, not in theory, but in practice. He describes the years when harvests failed in 5 provinces at the same time, and the Viziers spent weeks arguing over which region should receive help first. He tells you about a campaign planned for 16 months, then canceled in 5 days because the intelligence had been false. He tells you these stories because no book can give them to you. You listen. You write them down. You wait. Level 10, the Sultan. You are Kamal. You are Murad. You are Mehmed, who took Constantinople at 21 and transformed a city into an imperial capital and a legend into living reality. You are the shadow of God on earth. To the men who serve you, that phrase is not decorative language. It is a title, a worldview, a whole civilization ordered around the belief that your authority begins in the divine and operates without earthly limit. You have led armies over 5 continents, and with your seal, you have approved treaties that redrew the boundaries of the world. Men thought they understood. You have raised mosques, hospitals, bridges, and bodies of law that will keep speaking your name long after your voice is gone. You have ordered the deaths of servants who disappointed you and lifted others to heights they never imagined because they proved themselves when no one expected it. Sometimes, at different moments in a life, it was the very same man. At its greatest reach, the empire runs from the approaches to Vienna down toward the Persian Gulf and across the shores of North Africa. 50 million souls open their eyes each morning inside frontiers, secured by your soldiers, your officials, and the learned men who interpret your law. You dine by yourself at a table prepared for 18. No one sits with you unless you allow it. When you enter, chambers fall silent and people withdraw. You are never without attendants, guards, petitioners, scribes, and watchers, yet the loneliness around you is absolute. It has been attached to the throne for so many years that it no longer feels like a sacrifice. It feels like the air, like something that simply exists and always has. Your sons observe you from behind tutors, protocol, and the carefully arranged confines of palace life. You observe them in return. You love them. You do not trust them. Both truths live together without canceling each other out. After you, one of them will occupy this chamber. One and no more. You try not to spend too long imagining what becomes of the rest. An empire requires a successor who is prepared, not soft, not hesitant, not overcome by feeling when the hour demands iron. Prepared. That is the word that matters more than all the others. Your reign has been spent shaping institutions meant to survive your body. The laws you set in order will continue when your hand is no longer there to direct them. The mosques will endure when your name is found mainly on the pages of histories. The caravanserais along the Anatolian roads will still give shelter to merchants 180 years after you are buried. That is the purpose of a reign, not merely the years themselves, but what remains after them. Somewhere in a stone village tucked into a valley no mapmaker has bothered to mark, a child is being born at this very moment. His father works soil he does not possess. His grandfather did the same, and so did the grandfather before him. The boy will learn his prayers. He will bend his back in the fields. He will pay what is demanded by the state, by the sipahi, and by the man who comes for the grain. His whole life will unfold inside a structure built by rulers like you and maintained by men who answer to men who answer, eventually to you. He will never look upon your face. Yet his life and yours are bound by 9 Zuzen invisible strands: law, work, belief, obedience, fear, necessity. You stand at the peak, looking out over the world you command. He stands at the foundation, carrying its weight. Neither of you can exist without the other. And so the cycle goes on.